Officer, I can assure you that everything here is completely up to code, I said, handing over a thick folder of permits. I even have certification that this sand was ethically sourced from a sustainable beach restoration project in Florida. Would you care for a complimentary coconut drink? Non-alcoholic, of course. Karen's face turned a shade of red that perfectly matched the setting sun behind my newly installed palm trees. The two police officers, Davidson and Rodriguez according to their name tags, looked bewildered as they surveyed my backyard. What had once been a standard suburban swimming pool was now surrounded by pristine white sand, professional-grade beach umbrellas, tiki bars, and a small grove of potted palm trees. A steel drum band played gentle rhythms while my guests, all dressed in tropical shirts, mingled with frozen drinks in hand. "Mr. Reynolds," Officer Davidson said carefully, "we received a complaint about an unauthorized commercial establishment operating in a residential zone." "It's a beach resort," Karen interjected, pointing accusingly at my tiki bar. "He's running a business." "It's a private gathering," I corrected. "No money is changing hands, no tickets sold, nothing commercial whatsoever." I flipped through my permit folder. Here's my temporary structures permit, landscaping approval, noise compliance certification, and even a letter from the city zoning administrator confirming this is all within residential use guidelines. Officer Rodriguez suppressed what looked suspiciously like a smile as she reviewed the documents. "Everything appears to be in order, ma'am. No noise ordinances are being violated, and Mr. Reynolds has permits for his beach." "This is outrageous," Karen spluttered. "He can't just—" "Actually, I can," I said pleasantly. "Would you like to join us? We have some excellent virgin daiquiris." How did things escalate to this point? Well, it all started about 6 months ago, shortly after I moved in. I bought my house in Oak Ridge Estates after my divorce was finalized. At 35, I found myself single again and looking for a fresh start. The 4-bedroom in a quiet suburban neighborhood seemed perfect, particularly the backyard with its well-maintained in-ground pool. As a tech consultant working remotely, I figured the pool would be my salvation during hot summer days between Zoom calls. The neighborhood was upscale, but not ostentatious. Most residents were professionals with manicured lawns and sensible SUVs in their driveways. I met several neighbors during my first week. The Andersons next door with their 2 teenagers, elderly Mr. Fitzgerald across the street who had lived there since the development was built, and Sarah and Tony Miller, who brought over a welcome basket. "You'll love it here," Sarah assured me. "Great schools, though I guess that doesn't matter to you yet. And it's so quiet." "Except during my kids' band practice," Tony added with a laugh. "Sorry in advance for that. I work from home, but I've got a good noise-canceling headset," I assured them. "And I was thinking of having some friends over this weekend to break in the pool. Nothing wild, just a small gathering. You're welcome to stop by." "We'd love to," Sarah said. "It's nice to have someone under 50 moving in." That Saturday, I hosted my first pool party. 8 friends, some burgers on the grill, music at a reasonable volume, and plenty of swimming. A few neighbors, including the Millers, stopped by to introduce themselves. Everything wrapped up by 10 p.m. Completely civilized. It was as I was cleaning up that I first noticed the woman standing in the street, staring at my house. Middle-aged, arms crossed, mouth set in a thin line of disapproval. When she saw me notice her, she quickly walked away. "That's Karen Matthews," Tony told me later. "Lives in the greenhouse at the end of the block. She's our local, what's the polite term, neighborhood enthusiasm coordinator." His wife, Sarah, snorted. "That's one way to put it. Last summer she called noise complaints on our daughter's 6th birthday party. A bounce house at 2 p.m. was apparently disturbing the peace." "Is there an HOA I should know about?" I asked, suddenly concerned. No official one, Tony explained. Though not for lack of Karen trying. Every couple of years she circulates a petition trying to establish one. So far, it's been voted down. Just be prepared, Sarah advised. Karen considers herself the unofficial enforcer of neighborhood standards. I shrugged it off. I was a reasonable adult who kept a tidy property and respected quiet hours. What could possibly be the issue? The answer came in an official-looking letter left in my mailbox after my third pool gathering, printed on heavy cream stationery with Neighborhood Preservation Committee in embossed letters at the top. It detailed concerns regarding excessive noise and inappropriate activities at 347 Oak Ridge Drive. The letter continued with remarkable specificity. Weekend gatherings involving the pool area have created disturbances including, but not limited to, excessive laughter, splashing sounds, music with prominent bass notes, and the clinking of glass bottles, all of which disrupt the peaceful character of our community. It was signed Karen Matthews, committee chairperson, with a footnote indicating that immediate compliance is expected to avoid further action. After reading it twice to make sure it wasn't a joke, I decided to handle this directly. The next day, I walked down to Karen's immaculately maintained greenhouse and rang the doorbell. After a moment, the door opened to reveal the same disapproving woman I'd seen watching my house. She was wearing a cardigan, despite the summer heat. Mrs. Matthews, I'm Jack Reynolds from up the street. I got your letter and wanted to discuss your concerns in person. She eyeballed me like I was trying to sell her a timeshare. The committee has received multiple complaints. The committee being concerned residents. She adjusted her cardigan. Your pool gatherings are disruptive to the peaceful character of Oak Ridge Estates. They end by 10 p.m., and I don't think we're particularly loud. Furthermore, she continued as if I hadn't spoken, pools are for family recreation, not for festivities. I'm not sure what the difference is, I said, genuinely confused. It's just friends swimming and having some food. Mr. Reynolds. Her tone suggested she was speaking to a particularly dim child. Perhaps you don't understand the caliber of community you've moved into. Oak Ridge Estates has standards. Informal gatherings centered around alcohol consumption and loud water activities do not meet those standards. There's no excessive alcohol and I've documented 17 instances of bottles being carried into your property last Saturday alone. I blinked, taken aback by both the surveillance and the accounting. You've been counting my groceries? I observe and document neighborhood concerns, she corrected. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an appointment. She closed the door in my face, leaving me standing on her porch, letter in hand, thoroughly confused about what crime I'd apparently committed by having friends over for a swim. The following weekend, I hosted another pool gathering. If anything, I made it even more low-key. Just 6 friends, a cooler of seltzers rather than beer, and music kept at background level. We were playing a casual game of water volleyball when a police cruiser pulled up. 2 officers approached my backyard gate. Sir, we received a noise complaint about this address. I climbed out of the pool, dripping. Really? We've been keeping it pretty quiet. The older officer, Barrett, according to his nameplate, looked embarrassed. Protocol requires us to respond to all calls. Honestly. His partner finished the thought. Honestly, we can barely hear you from the street, but since we're here, we need to at least check noise levels. They produced a decibel meter, which showed we were well below violation thresholds. After apologizing for the interruption, they left, but not before I caught them glancing longingly at the pool in the summer heat. From my driveway, I could see Karen standing on her porch, phone in hand, looking frustrated that her plan had failed. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, I found a violation notice stuck to my mailbox. It wasn't an official city document, Just a printed page with clip art of a gavel at the top. Under offense, someone had written, "Continued noise disturbances and inappropriate use of residential amenities." Over the next 2 weeks, the situation escalated. I'd find Karen taking photos of my house when friends arrived. More unofficial violation notices appeared. Once, I caught her writing down license plate numbers of cars parked in front of my house. "You need to document everything," advised my friend Rachel, an attorney who'd witnessed Karen's surveillance during our last gathering. "This is starting to border on harassment." I began keeping a log of every interaction and taking photos of the notices. I also installed a discreet security camera covering my driveway after finding a flyer for pool safety inspections that Karen had apparently distributed to my neighbors, suggesting my pool might not be up to code. Seeking more context, I invited Bob Johnson, a longtime resident, over for coffee one morning. "She's been like this for years," he explained, settling into my patio chair. "Her husband left 5 years ago, and it's gotten worse since then." "What happened with the Johnsons' koi pond?" I asked, having heard references to this neighborhood legend. "Oh, man." Bob laughed into his coffee. "They installed it without getting Karen's unofficial approval. She reported them for creating a mosquito breeding ground. Had the city out here 3 times for inspections. They eventually filled it in just to end the harassment." "That's insane," I said. "I'm not filling in my pool." "No one expects you to," Bob assured me. "Most neighbors are on your side. We're all just tired of fighting her." I was determined not to surrender so easily. I tried various accommodations, installing privacy screens, which prompted complaints about unsightly barriers, shifting gatherings to earlier in the day, which led to objections about peak noise hours, and even trying to soundproof my yard with strategically placed shrubs, which violated the aesthetic continuity of the neighborhood, according to another notice. The final straw came when I overheard Karen speaking to Mrs. Fitzgerald at the community mailboxes. "It's the character of these gatherings that concerns me," Karen was saying. "These trashy beach parties are bringing down property values." I froze, confused. Beach parties? My gatherings were just regular pool parties, no beach theme whatsoever. Was she confusing me with someone else? That evening, I called my sister Lisa to vent. "She called them trashy beach parties," I complained. "They're not even beach-themed, just people swimming in a regular pool." "Maybe you should lean into it," Lisa suggested, laughing. "Go full beach resort. Import sand, get those fancy cabanas, hire a guy to walk around with umbrellas and towels." "That's ridiculous," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I was already picturing it. "Jack, you've always been the responsible brother, the one who follows the rules. Maybe it's time for a little controlled rebellion? Besides, what's more American than spiteful property modification?" The more I thought about it, the more appealing the idea became. Not just as revenge, but as a creative challenge. Could I actually transform my ordinary backyard into a legitimate beach experience? As a project manager by profession, I approached it methodically. First, I consulted with my attorney friend Rachel about legal boundaries. "Surprisingly, there's not much preventing you from doing this," she said after researching local ordinances. "Since there's no HOA, you're mainly bound by city codes. As long as the modifications are temporary and don't permanently alter grading or drainage, most of it would fall under landscaping regulations rather than construction." "Define temporary," I asked. "Anything that could theoretically be removed without significant impact to the property. So sand that isn't permanently fixed, structures that aren't permanently anchored, plants in containers rather than planted directly." With legal boundaries established, I researched materials. It turned out there were companies specializing in pool-grade sand, specifically designed not to clog filters or create mud when wet. portable tiki bars were readily available online. Palm trees could be purchased in large planters, keeping them technically temporary. The hardest part was finding someone to implement my vision. 3 landscapers declined after hearing my plans. 2 pool contractors laughed and suggested less extreme options. Finally, through a friend, I connected with Miguel Alvarez, an eccentric landscape designer who had previously worked on theme park designs. Miguel arrived driving a colorful Jeep with Alvarez Environments painted on the side. He walked slowly around my yard, nodding occasionally, stopping to check sun angles and occasionally sketching on his tablet. "So you want to transform your basic backyard pool into a resort-style beach experience," Miguel said, sketching rapidly as we walked around my yard. "Not as a professional venue, but as an elaborate personal screw you to your neighbor." I wouldn't put it quite that way, but essentially, yes. Miguel stopped sketching and looked at me with new respect. "You know, most of my clients want something beautiful but safe. Nobody ever asks for something beautiful but petty. I love it. Let's make this woman question her life choices." We spent the next 2 hours developing the concept. Miguel's expertise elevated my petty revenge plot into something genuinely impressive. He suggested a special drainage system that would keep the sand dry and prevent it from migrating into the pool. He designed a subtly sloped terrain that would create the illusion of a natural beach gradually descending into the water. He even proposed a small boardwalk connecting different areas of the yard to prevent sand from being tracked indoors. The budget made me wince, but I was too committed to back down. We scheduled work to begin the following week. The day the first delivery truck arrived with 20 tons of specialized white sand, Karen came speed-walking across the street, phone already recording. "What is happening here?" she demanded. "Home improvement project," I replied cheerfully. "You can't just turn your backyard into a beach." Actually, according to Municipal Code, Section 12.7, I can install temporary landscaping materials without additional permits, as long as they don't permanently alter drainage patterns. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. This is going to look fantastic, I agree. The palm trees arrive tomorrow." Karen stormed off, undoubtedly to research counter-strategies. I wasn't concerned. Rachel had helped me verify that everything was legally sound, if unconventional. Over the next 3 weeks, my backyard transformed. The fine white sand was distributed around the pool in an artful gradient, thicker at the edges and gradually thinning as it approached the water. 6 palm trees in massive planters created pockets of shade. Tiki-style shade structures were installed at strategic points. A small outdoor shower station allowed swimmers to rinse sand off before entering the pool. Solar-powered LED lighting was embedded along the boardwalk and around the palm trees. The most ostentatious addition, and Karen's particular breaking point, was the umbrella rack. On Miguel's suggestion, I purchased a stand holding colorful beach umbrellas and thick towels, positioned near the pool entrance. Beside it, I installed a small brass bell with a sign reading, "Ring for service." "The bell is perhaps too much," Rachel commented when she saw the completed project. "The bell is precisely enough," I countered. Karen's response was swift and multi-pronged. First came the city inspector, Calvin, a serious man with a clipboard and measuring tape who spent 2 hours examining every aspect of my beach creation. "Well," he said finally, "everything seems to be in order. The drainage plans look solid, the sand containment system is properly installed, and since the trees are in planters rather than planted, they're considered temporary structures. So I'm good to go?" "Technically, yes." He lowered his voice. "Between us, this is the most interesting inspection I've done in years. My job is usually telling people they can't do things. Karen, who had been hovering nearby, stormed over. This can't possibly be allowed. Calvin adjusted his hard hat. Ma'am, I don't make the rules, I just enforce them, and nothing here violates code. With city regulations satisfied, I scheduled my first official beach party. I invited not just my regular friends, but also neighbors who had shown support during the construction phase. Sarah and Tony brought their kids. Bob brought homemade salsa. Even Mr. Fitzgerald came, declaring he hadn't seen a decent beach since Normandy, though that one had more gunfire and fewer cocktails. 2 hours into the party, a police cruiser pulled up. Karen stood smugly at the end of my driveway as Officer Davis approached, her arms crossed in victory. Sir, we've received a noise complaint, he said, then paused as he took in the full beach scene. Are those real palm trees? They're in planters, I explained, handing him a virgin piña colada in a coconut cup. Everything's temporary and up to code. Inspector Calvin from the city was just out yesterday, if you want to call him. Officer Davis sipped the drink involuntarily. This is delicious. I mean, we still need to check the noise levels. The decibel meter showed we were well within limits. As Officer Davis explained this to Karen, I couldn't help but notice him eyeing our volleyball game with longing. Your shift end soon? I asked quietly. 40 minutes, he admitted. We'll save you some nachos. Word of my backyard transformation spread quickly. Friends invited friends. Neighbors who had initially kept their distance started asking if they could bring guests. One Saturday, a local Instagram influencer somehow showed up, friend of a coworker, and posted pictures that went semi-viral locally. By the following weekend, I had to start maintaining a guest list to prevent strangers from showing up expecting a public beach. Even at the neighborhood block party, I became a minor celebrity. You're the beach house guy, exclaimed the new family that had just moved in down the street. Our kids have been begging us to meet you. Bob clapped me on the shoulder. Jack here has the best backyard in 3 counties. Tell them about the umbrella service. It's not really a service, I explained, embarrassed. I just have a rack of umbrellas and beach towels that guests can use. And the little bell to ring when you want a fresh towel, Sarah added, grinning. That's what sent Karen over the edge last month. Karen, meanwhile, intensified her countermeasures. She reported me to every regulatory agency she could find. I dealt with inspectors from the health department, the business licensing office, the environmental quality division, and even agricultural control, due to the palm trees being potential invasive species, despite being in planters. Mr. Reynolds, we've received reports that you're operating an unlicensed commercial recreation facility, the business license inspector said during one visit. I handed him my prepared folder. I can assure you this is a private residence with landscape features. I've never charged entry or received any compensation for use of my property. He reviewed my documentation. And these guest logs? Just friends and neighbors. You'll notice no one has ever paid me anything. What about the... He checked his notes. Umbrella service. It's just a rack of umbrellas. People help themselves. And the bell? I sighed. It's a dinner bell I use to announce when food is ready. Each inspection ended the same way. Grudging acknowledgement that, while unusual, my beach setup violated no actual regulations. The sole exception was a health department inspector who identified a legitimate concern. Inspector Miller pointed to a small area where the drainage system met the sand. This section could potentially retain moisture below the surface. In our climate, that could create conditions for bacterial growth. My heart sank. After all this, would I be defeated by a drainage detail? However, she continued, if you installed this simple adjustment to the drainage grade and implemented a weekly sand treatment protocol, it would exceed requirements. So I can keep the beach? With these modifications, yes. She closed her notebook. Though I've been doing this job 20 years and never thought I'd inspect a private residential beach. Miguel implemented the required changes immediately, and we established a rigorous maintenance schedule that went beyond requirements. The beach remained operational, much to Karen's evident frustration. Then came her masterstroke. One Tuesday morning, every household in Oak Ridge Estates received an official-looking envelope containing a proposal to establish a homeowners association, complete with bylaws and a signature page. The document cited recent unconventional property uses that threaten neighborhood character and property values, and included specific provisions prohibiting non-natural landscaping materials covering more than 10 square feet. Sarah came running over that evening, proposal in hand. "Have you seen this? It's a direct attack on your beach." I had indeed seen it and was already strategizing with Rachel about potential responses when Tony arrived, followed by Bob, then the Andersons, until my living room was filled with concerned neighbors. "She did what?" Sarah was furious, scanning the HOA proposal again. "Apparently she's been working on this for months," I explained to the group. "The proposed bylaws specifically prohibit non-natural landscaping materials covering more than 10 square feet, which would outlaw my beach." "And most of my rock garden," Bob growled. "And my daughter's playground," Tony added. "The vote is next week," I said. "If this passes, the beach will have to go." The impromptu meeting quickly transformed into a strategy session. It became clear that while my beach was the immediate target, many neighbors had projects or property features that would be jeopardized by Karen's overly restrictive bylaws. We organized a door-to-door information campaign to counter what we learned had been Karen's selective presentation of the HOA benefits. But as I lay awake that night, I found myself reconsidering my position. My beach had begun as an act of petty revenge, but it had evolved into something more meaningful. It had become a gathering place, a community feature that brought joy to more people than just me. Perhaps there was a better solution than simply defeating Karen's proposal and continuing an escalating neighborhood war. The next morning I called Miguel, then Rachel, then several of the neighbors who had become regular beach users. By evening, I had a counter-proposal ready. At the official neighborhood meeting the following week, the community center was packed. Karen stood at the front with her two closest allies, preparing to present the HOA proposal, when I raised my hand. "Before we vote on the HOA, I'd like to present an alternative solution that might address some of the legitimate concerns while preserving neighborhood harmony." Karen tried to object, but too many residents called for me to speak. I walked to the front carrying my presentation materials. "What I'm proposing," I explained, "is to establish a community beach access agreement. Any resident who opts in would share minimal maintenance costs, much less than a pool membership, and have scheduled access to the beach area. We'd establish reasonable hours, noise limits, and community standards." "But my property values," Karen began. Bob interrupted. "Have gone up since the beach was installed. My cousin's a realtor and says houses near the beach house are getting more interest." "This is ridiculous," Karen sputtered. "A private beach in a residential neighborhood." "It's either this compromise," I said, "or we vote down your HOA proposal and I keep doing whatever I want with my property. Your choice." I outlined the details of my proposal. A simple scheduling system for neighbors who wanted to use the beach, modest monthly dues to cover maintenance and supplies, clear hours of operation, and noise restrictions that would address Karen's original complaints. In exchange, I would establish an oversight committee of neighborhood representatives to ensure the beach remained a positive community feature, rather than a private indulgence. The debate lasted nearly 2 hours, with passionate arguments on both sides. In the end, though, the vote was decisive. 28 3 against Karen's HOA proposal and 25. 6 in favor of the Community Beach Agreement. Karen and her 2 closest allies sat stone-faced as the results were announced. Mr. Jenkins, a retiree who had initially opposed my beach, approached me afterward. "I still think it's ridiculous," he admitted. "But my grandkids love it. And that sand is easier on my arthritic knees than concrete when I do my water aerobics." 6 months later, my backyard beach had been fully transformed into a community amenity. Miguel, whom I'd hired as the official beach manager, his idea, not mine, maintained a schedule that included everything from children's birthday parties to senior water aerobics to weekend social gatherings. The modest membership dues covered maintenance and occasional improvements, most recently a small splash pad area for toddlers. Property values in Oak Ridge Estates had actually increased, with 2 recent sales specifically mentioning proximity to the Neighborhood Beach Club as a selling point. Even some of Karen's original allies had become regular users, though Karen herself remained conspicuously absent. "I never thought I'd say this," Sarah told me as we watched the neighborhood kids building sand castles one Saturday afternoon. "But Karen might have done us a favor. Before your beach war, I knew maybe 5 neighbors by name. Now I know everyone on the block." "Community building through spite," I laughed. "Not the conventional approach." "Speaking of Karen, have you noticed she's been quieter lately?" I nodded toward the far side of the pool, where Karen was reluctantly accepting a schedule slot for her niece's birthday party from Miguel. 2 weeks later, the birthday party took place. I made myself scarce for most of it, not wanting to create awkwardness, but eventually found myself face to face with Karen as she supervised her niece's sand castle construction. "My sister says this was all because I complained about your pool parties," Karen said stiffly. "Well, it did escalate rather quickly. Richard, my ex-husband, met his new wife at a resort in Cancun. I suppose I've had issues with beach parties since then." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. "That's rough." She adjusted her sun hat. "The children seem to enjoy it, and Miguel has implemented acceptable safety protocols." From Karen, this was practically a rave review. "Would you like a drink? Non-alcoholic, of course." "Perhaps a small iced tea, with an umbrella since they're available." 1 year after that first beach delivery, Oak Ridge Estates had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. The first annual Oak Ridge Beach Festival drew residents from all over the neighborhood, featuring sand sculpture competitions, a steel drum band, and potluck dishes from various cultural traditions. I'd started dating Sarah's recently divorced sister, Elaine, who had declared my beach project the most wonderfully petty thing she'd ever seen the first time she visited. Karen had mellowed slightly and now headed the Beach Safety Committee, approaching the role with the same intensity she had once directed towards stopping the beach entirely. As I watched the sunset from my porch, toes in the imported sand that started it all, I couldn't help but laugh at how things had turned out. What began as the most elaborate middle finger in home improvement history had somehow turned into our neighborhood's heart. Miguel approached with clipboard in hand. "The summer schedule is fully booked, and we've got 3 pending requests for fall birthday parties." "Including Karen's?" I asked, still not quite believing it. She submitted all paperwork in triplicate and has already provided her umbrella color preferences. The beach bell rang in the distance, now our official signal for community announcements rather than my petty service bell. Some forms of spite, it turns out, can build rather than destroy. And that's how I accidentally became the owner of the most popular community beach in a landlocked neighborhood, all because Karen complained about my perfectly reasonable pool parties.